Have you ever been so tired that even rest doesn't feel like enough? Hello and welcome to the Marvellous-U Podcast. Today, I'll be discussing parent burnout, the signs, prevention, and how to recover. If you're new to this channel, I would like to encourage you to please subscribe, like, and share. You can also click on the notification button so that you will know when a new episode is out. And that is how you support the channel. Subscription is free. Have you ever been so tired that even rest does not feel like enough? In my last episode, I shared my journey into special needs parenting and receiving a diagnosis for my son. And soon after his birth, our life has been a roller coaster of events. Any mom raising a newborn knows that it's often difficult the first couple of months. And as a mom having a child with special need, the first year was emotionally and physically draining because it was a constant juggle between attending hospital appointments, attending therapy sessions, and also trying to care for this new baby who needed to be handled with care because of his diagnosis. He had brittle bone. And so it was a constant juggle of parenting, caring, because he was often in pain and crying a lot. I remember after a year of doing this, my elder sister came visiting. And at that time, my son was sick. He had a bad cold and hadn't slept for days. I remember telling my sister, take this baby from me tonight and stay with him. If I don't sleep tonight, I don't know what will happen to me tomorrow. At that time, I felt like I hadn't slept in a year. I was that emotionally and physically drained. And she had to take the baby. And honestly, if she didn't take that baby away from me that night, I don't know how I would have coped the next day. I was exhausted. I slept throughout that night. It was as if nothing in this world existed. I slept soundly because she had the baby with her throughout the night. And she didn't sleep because he was crying, constant crying. And in the morning, we had to quickly go to the A&E. So what is parent burnout? Burnout is more than just feeling tired. It's a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion that happens when the demands placed on us consistently outweigh the resources we have to cope. It's chronic stress and emotional exhaustion from caregiving. And for parents of children with special needs, burnout can develop gradually because caregiving is not only constant, it's deeply emotional. So for moms, while many moms will often experience tiredness from caring for a baby or caring for their child, burnout isn't simply about being tired. It's the cumulative effect of carrying multiple roles at once. You are not just a mom, you are an advocate, you are the nurse, the teacher, the organizer, emotional support for your children, and this you do often without enough rest or recognition. I remember sometimes a day in my life is like working in an office. I'm booking appointments, I'm calling up different professionals, sending emails or reading emails. It's a lot to deal with. It's important to recognize this difference because while everyone may feel tired, for many moms, burnout is not simply being tired. And if you are experiencing this, you are not alone. While burnout will affect all caregivers, many moms experience it in ways that are shaped by societal expectation and the intensity of caregiving. For moms of children with special needs, we often carry a mental load. You're thinking of the next appointment, the next therapy. And if your child has started school, you are thinking of school communication. And then the household responsibilities. And so it's a constant juggle. And burnout may show up as constant mental clutter or forgetfulness. And this is what happens sometimes because of the mental clutter or forgetfulness. You often miss appointments or you forget when your child is supposed to be in therapy. And so you get the call to say, oh, we're waiting for you. You are supposed to be here now. But you have forgotten because of the mental load that you have to carry. When we are in the hospital, I often get irritable due to the emotional weight that I carry as a mom while it's trying to stay strong and positive for my son. I get irritable with the nurses coming in and out, checking every minute while I'm just trying to rest or get my son to be calm. Because you feel too exhausted. For many moms, burnout will result in isolation. You find yourself withdrawing from friends or social activities, not because you don't want the connection, but because you are just too exhausted to maintain friendships or attend social activities. And burnout also can blur the line between mom and carer. And for many of us women, we feel like we have lost touch with our own identity outside of caregiving. And I discussed this fully in the episode, in a previous episode about reclaiming your identity. And what are the physical signs also? For many months, there is headaches, disrupted sleep, or frequent illnesses, which is the way the body signals to us that we are experiencing a burnout. There is a concept known as compassion fatigue. And compassion fatigue is the emotional, physical and psychological exhaustion that results from caring deeply for others who are suffering, often over a prolonged period. This is sometimes called the cost of caring because it arises when empathy and compassion are stretched beyond healthy limits. For moms or caregivers, the emotional cost of caring develops when someone is deeply exposed to another person's pain, trauma or distress, and begins to feel drained. When my son has to go through an orthopedic surgery, the pain that he feels drains me emotionally because I feel helpless seeing him go through so much distress. This is different from just burnout. Burnout is often linked to workplace stress or when you have overworked yourself in your house, but compassion fatigue is tied to empathizing with another person's suffering. It's often described as a secondary traumatic stress because caregivers absorb some of the emotional weight of those they support. If you're caring for somebody that is vulnerable, that is going through a lot of distress, that is going through a lot of pain, it rubs off on you. And that is what is known as compassion fatigue. It's the physical, emotional, and psychological exhaustion that comes with being exposed, caring deeply for others who are suffering. In short, compassion fatigue is the emotional weariness that comes from caring too much for too long. And as a mom of a child with special need, it is not a one-off, episode in your life. It's a constant. This is something that you have to do for a long time. And so naming it is to help us understand that the exhaustion that we feel is not failure. It's a human response to sustained empathy. We care deeply and it affects us deeply. Why does it matter? When you are experiencing compassion fatigue, it doesn't mean that you are weak or you are uncaring. In fact, it affects those who are very caring, who are most empathetic and who are dedicated. And recognizing it is very crucial because if it's left untreated, it can lead to burnout, it can lead to depression or strained relationship. And in many households that have children with special needs, relationships are often strained because sometimes it seems like one person cares too deeply more than the other. For moms and dads of children with special needs, compassion fatigue may look like feeling emotionally empty after supporting your child through a medical or educational challenges. Sometimes supporting your child through nights of sleeplessness can leave you emotionally empty. And then you start struggling to balance empathy for your child and with your own need for rest. And this is where sometimes you just find yourself feeling numb. And then there is the guilt for feeling detached or feeling overwhelmed, even though your love remains strong. And in saying this, I remember a time where I was so exhausted I knew that I needed to care for my child, to help him with his care needs, his personal needs. I felt guilty knowing that I was too tired to do anything. I know that he loves me, and I know that my child knows that I love him very much. But at that moment, I was just too overwhelmed. I was too tired to help him. I just kept looking at my time and just wishing for his dad to come home quickly to take over from me. Because as much as I love him, I just could not help him at that moment. Let's understand the differences between burnout and compassion fatigue. Remember, I said burnout is a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion that is caused by prolonged stress and overwork. And many moms will experience burnout. Many workers, depending on what you do, you experience burnout if you are exposed to this prolonged stress. But compassion fatigue is the emotional and psychological exhaustion that comes from caring deeply for others who are suffering. For burnout, the causes are continuous demand outweighing your personal resources. For example, if you have increased workload or responsibilities and then the lack of rest. But the root cause of compassion fatigue is prolonged exposure to another person's pain, trauma, or distress and absorbing their suffering. This leads to reduced empathy, emotional numbness, secondary traumatic stress, and feeling empty after caregiving. In burnout, the features will be emotional exhaustion, a loss of motivation, or reduced effectiveness and detachment from tasks. Burnout will affect anyone that is under chronic stress, like parents, professionals, and caregivers. But compassion fatigue affects those in caregiving or helping roles, especially parents of children with special needs. It's also found more in the hospitals among healthcare workers and teachers. The signs of burnout in parents are constant fatigue, irritability, feeling ineffective, and withdrawal from responsibilities. For compassion fatigue, the signs are feeling emotionally drained after supporting a child, or feeling guilty because of the feelings of detachment that often comes when you are experiencing compassion fatigue. Another sign is struggling to connect emotionally. And where is the overlap? In burnout and compassion fatigue, there's an overlap. Both involve exhaustion, withdrawal, and reduced joy, and both can coexist. Compassion fatigue often leads to burnout if unaddressed. Burnout is about being overwhelmed by the demands of caregiving. Compassion fatigue is about being overwhelmed by the emotions of caregiving. And both of these are human responses. They are not signs of weakness. Recognizing them helps us protect our own well-being, which in turn supports our children's well-being. How do you know if you are experiencing a burnout? While I've mentioned some of the signs, there are some key features of burnout, and one is emotional exhaustion. Feeling drained, feeling overwhelmed, or unable to give emotionally, even when you want to, is one major sign of a burnout. And then there is the physical tiredness, the physical fatigue, the persistent tiredness that doesn't go away with rest. The more you rest, the more you are tired. The headaches, the poor sleep that comes with that also. And you also experience a loss of joy when activities that often felt meaningful or enjoyable are no longer enjoyable. That is a sign of burnout. The things that you love doing suddenly become like chores that you want to avoid. It's also a sign of burnout. And there is the detachment, a sense of being on autopilot. You are just disconnected from your child, you are disconnected from family, or disconnected from yourself. And for a long time, my life was in that kind of state of autopilot. Another sign is reduced effectiveness. You're struggling to manage your daily tasks or feeling like nothing you do is enough. And this reduced effectiveness is what will often lead to forgetfulness and irritability, because you are struggling. You can't cope with your daily tasks anymore. These are common signs of burnout. Why does it matter if you are a parent of a child with special need? It matters because caregiving often requires round-the-clock attention, advocacy, and emotional resilience. If you have a child that requires 24-hour attention, the tendency to suffer from burnout, it becomes even more crucial. And then the advocacy, having to speak up, having to, fight for services or fight for the things that your child needs, is draining. The emails you need to respond to, getting medication from the pharmacy, chasing a doctor, trying to get therapy in place. Sometimes it's like it's non-stop. There's always something to do. And many parents feel pressure to be strong all the time. And this can make it harder to recognize your own limits. And so you keep going. You keep fighting. You're trying to stay on top of everything, stay on top of your diary with all of the appointments that you have to deal with. But burnout doesn't mean you're failing. It's just a signal that your body and mind need care, just as much as your child also. How do we recover from burnout? There are 5 ways to recover from burnout. Maybe more, but I'll mention 5. The first one is to acknowledge it. Sometimes we deny what is obvious. You find yourself irritable. You find yourself forgetful. You know that you are under stress, but you keep wanting to be strong. You keep wanting to pretend that you want to remain positive, that you're on top of everything. The truth is, you can't heal what you deny. You can't heal what you deny. Acknowledge it. When I had my second episode of Burnout, just before the COVID-19 pandemic, I had to acknowledge it. I used to tell my friends then that COVID-19 pandemic was my savior, because at that point I wanted everything to stop. I just could not go on anymore, and the whole world stopped. I had to acknowledge that I was burnt out. I just could not cope anymore. So the first step is to acknowledge it. You can't heal what you deny. And then share the load. Ask for help. My son was grown at this time, but the load of caregiving was getting too much for me to deal with. I had to call my husband and say, I need your help. I need you more than you know. I need you more than any job you have to go to. If you don't step in, I won't be able to go on. So ask for help from families, support groups, or professionals, and share the load. At that point, my husband had to go self-employed because there was no way I was going to continue the way I was. I was completely burnt out. Another way you can recover from burnout is micro rest moments. Take little moments to rest. 10 minutes of reset count. This is something I have learned and I've continued to practice. I stop myself from just going, through the day like, a train wreck. I try to always take time out to just breathe, to take a break, to just stay in silence all by myself. And when I do that, I have enough fuel to continue for the rest of the day. Another way to recover from burnout is to reestablish boundaries. Sometimes there's just a lot of things around you that drain your energy. It could be relationship, either with friends or family, but saying no helps to protect your energy. And this is so important, to redraw your lines, your boundary lines, so that you can protect your energy. And then reconnect with purpose. Remember why you do what you do, because it's purpose that fuels resilience. If you remember why you're doing what you're doing, it will help you to recover from a burnout. In psychology, there is a theory developed by Dr. Christine Neff known as the self-compassion theory. And this theory explains that treating ourselves with kindness, recognizing our shared humanity, and practicing mindfulness can build resilience and enhance emotional well-being. This theory is a framework for addressing personal struggles with compassion instead of harsh self-criticism, similar to the kindness we would offer a loved one. And the self-compassion theory is so important. It's about treating yourself as kindly as you would your child. And there are 3 core components of self-compassion. The first is self-kindness versus self-judgment. Instead of criticizing yourself when you fail or suffer, respond with warmth and understanding. Be kind to yourself. So, for example, you can say it's okay. Everyone makes mistakes rather than I'm useless. Don't be too self-critical when you fail or when you are not able to do the things you usually would do. The second component is about our common humanity versus isolation. Recognizing that suffering and imperfection are part of the shared human experience. We are not all perfect. In fact, imperfection is what makes us human. This will shift your perspective from I'm the only one struggling to struggle is part of being human. When you recognize that we are not perfect human beings, it helps to shift your perspective so that you don't stay in that feeling of, oh, I'm the only one going through this. No, you are not. Whatever you are experiencing is common to man, is common to our humanity. The third component of self-compassion is mindfulness versus over-identification. So here you are holding painful thoughts and emotions in balanced awareness without suppressing or exaggerating them. For example, you might notice that you feel sad right now, but you don't have to be consumed by the sadness. Feeling sad doesn't mean that your entire being has to be consumed by sadness. You could feel it, you could, be mindful of it, but you don't have to frame it as if you are consumed by that sadness. So these are the three components of self-compassion. Self-kindness versus self-judgment, our common humanity versus isolation, and mindfulness versus over-identification. Why does self-compassion matter? Self-compassion helps to create emotional balance. It reduces anxiety, depression, and shame by softening self-criticism. When we express self-compassion, we get rid of all of the negative self-talk we tell ourselves. It also leads to healthy motivation. Research shows that self-compassion encourages growth and learning rather than laziness or self-pity that comes from self-criticism. The self-compassion theory is especially powerful for parents who often feel pressure to be endlessly strong. In one of my videos, I talked about the myth of the strong woman. You don't have to be strong, and it's not possible for you to be strong all the time. So self-compassion teaches us that we need to be kind to ourselves, just as we are kind to the people that we care for. It leads to self-kindness. It reminds us that it's okay to feel tired or overwhelmed. It also shows our common humanity. It validates that whatever you are feeling, other parents also feel it too. They share similar struggles. And so you don't have to feel like you are the only one. It helps to reduce that isolation of feeling like I'm the only one going through this. No, you are not. And self-compassion helps us to be mindful. It helps parents to acknowledge their emotions without being consumed by guilt or worry. So it encourages mindfulness. Dr. Neff's theory of self-compassion reframes self-care as an act of compassion towards ourselves, not an indulgence. By practicing self-kindness, shared humanity and mindfulness, parents can sustain their caregiving role with greater emotional strength and less risk of burnout or compassion fatigue. So as a parent, as a caregiver, you are not failing when you experience a burnout. You are fatigued. And rest is not a reward. Rest is a right. I would like to invite you, if you are a parent of a child with special need that has experienced burnout or is experiencing a burnout, I want you to journal one small change that you will make this week for your well-being. It's important to take care of yourself, because when you care for yourself, you care better for those you love. I will also want to ask you to send an email to hi@graceanigoro.com to receive a simple free daily exercise guide for practicing self-compassion. Remember, when you care for yourself, you care better for those you love. See you in the next episode. If you have not already subscribed, please do subscribe to this channel, like, leave your comments, and please share. Thank you.